Okay, so now, welcome everyone. I'm going to introduce the session. I was down to act as bouncer because it was a popular one and numbers were high, but we've only got a couple of spaces. Alan is going to take us through a presentation and we'll leave some space for discussion at the end because the purpose of today is to facilitate conversations between yourselves and get some feedback from us. The context of this is 14 to 16 learning under the Curriculum for Wales. We committed back in June when Qualifications Wales published their design criteria for a new suite of GCSEs that we would work to develop guidance for schools on expectations under the curriculum in the context of those new qualifications. And so that's what we want to talk to you today about. We want that guidance to be supportive. We want to understand kind of already what you're doing, thinking in this space. So a change isn't too much. We're conscious of considerations of workload, as well as funding, as the minister has talked about this morning. So we want to know what the system needs to be designed like to make what we think the changes that are needed work. So that's the context, new qualifications and the expectations of the Curriculum for Wales. I'll hand over now to Alan. We've had the benefit of having a secondee from the sector working with us over the last kind of year and a half on this. So we've had the voice of the sector through that, but he's been out of the classroom and is keen to remind everyone of this for at least 18 months. So really keen to hear from yourself today as well. Once you've been through the slides, Alan.
I think that's the equivalent of being thrown under the bus. Thank you very much for coming to this session, and it's hopefully going to be an interesting discussion. As we say, we've lost 10 minutes. It was jam-packed anyway, so you have to bear with me, strap yourselves in, and wait for my West Walian drawl to be spitting all over you as we try and get these first 10 slides done. And then some space for you to consider the remaining slides with some discussion questions. We printed those slides for you so that you can maybe arrange yourselves in some small groups to have a discussion. We just want to hear from you, but on the basis of maybe having set some of the scene initially. So what I'm going to take you through very quickly on where we are as far as qualifications are concerned, just to set some context. Then look at the wider context and think about sort of change management and the roles of school leaders in Curriculum for Wales existence in the 14 to 16 space in years 10 and 11, and then to maybe talk specifically about the consultation, and that's where we really want to get your feedback. But I just wanted to introduce the first little bit just so that we know that everybody's on the same page, because I know that people's involvement with qualifications reform varies, so just to make sure we're all broadly with the same understanding and context. It's a very rough, broad timeline, and I don't expect you to read everything that's on all these slides. That's one point to note, because you will have the packs. They've been written so that people can see them even if they don't attend today, so there's quite a lot of detail on the slide, but I've tried to embolden some of the bits that maybe you draw your eye to, and then you can just listen to me talking over the main bits. So, Qualification Decisions Report was published. That's been transferred now to WJC to get on with the writing and design work. I'd encourage you and all your staff to engage with the consultation, to make sure that they hear from the sector. I think that's really important now. There's an opportunity to influence that. But as we move towards this sort of phase, I think it's just about acknowledging that we've got a set of GCSEs which will be ready for first teaching in September 2025. But you'll also have seen probably a consultation on the full qualifications offer, which is the broader foundation, vocational and skills suite. That will come online from September 2027. So just to be cognizant or aware of that sort of timing shift as well in that sort of 25 to 27 period. As far as the Curriculum for Wales legislation, this is the bolt on the other bit of the context. This is the driving force for us from a policy perspective. In years 10 and 11, the curriculum specifies something slightly different to up to and including year 9, and that's on the board for you to see. On the board, sounds like I'm back in school. On the presentation for you to see now, that for years 10 and 11, it's about securing learning and teaching for each learner in each area. It's slightly different to that up to and including year 9. It talks about not everything in the statements of what matters for each area is included, but all areas need to form part of the curriculum. And we'll come a little bit to exploring what that actually means, or what it can mean, and how you can interpret it in schools in due course. And then there's some obvious important elements of RSE, RVE and those cross-curricular skills which the Minister talked about earlier on as their central importance in this reform, with careers and work-related experience being a real feature where it's part of the curriculum and progression for learners who will be hopefully far more informed and prepared for the sorts of more refined and mature conversations we can have with them in years 10 and 11 around next steps, and how we support, I suppose, the sector around this in light of those decisions around qualification. So that's the sort of theme, and that's where we're going here. Change management for you as leaders, I think there are some factors, there's a list of them here, but to me they centre around some key elements. There's something around the curriculum offer for learners. What's the menu that we're going to offer to them in our schools in terms of learning, experiences, courses that lead to qualifications? How do we then structure the curriculum? And as an ex-timetabler, May to June is a lot simpler now than it was 2 years ago and beyond for previous 6 years from that. I've got my time back, my weekends and my nights back, but I know the time and the laborious effort that goes into ensuring the best curriculum structure for learners, often influenced by, for example, teaching time required for subjects where there are qualifications. So how can we make sure that the structure is something visible, something we can see, and more importantly, that we and our learners can manage? How does that fit and align with what the curriculum is saying around statutory obligations and what our 14 to 16 guidance is hopefully going to elaborate a little bit more on? And it's, for me, the most important, which is why it's got a red box over it. How do we ensure that our vision for 3 to 16 learning and the curriculum for Wales survives in that complicated 14 to 16 space when there are other tensions and other pressures? And how can we make sure that the approach to teaching and learning is that approach that we are supporting our practitioners to develop now as we look at that sort of 3 to 16 curriculum for Wales reform? I think where we've sort of come to in all our discussions, there are certain sort of high-level principles that we consider to be really important. The Minister's talked today about all learners, regardless of their background, having that opportunity to progress along their own learning pathway, to reach their aspirations and to achieve their full potential. We know that post-16 next steps are really important, and having learners who are informed, who are able to make, who are well advised and able to make good choices around post-16, whether that's staying in a school sixth form, moving on to FE or other employment or apprenticeships, that they know what's on offer, and they also know themselves and where they fit in that post-16 world. And we want the curriculum for Wales to survive and not to end up in a situation we talked earlier about the risks, the lessons learned from Scotland, that we don't see a divide between them and as a result impact on our practitioners and our learners around what the experience in 3 to 14 looks like as distinct from 14 to 16. So how can we as a system ensure that that survives? Again, at a very high level, if you'll forgive me for a minute, we know that there are some sort of policy drivers in this space. We've got the curriculum for Wales and that sort of list of things I mentioned earlier on. But I think one of the themes that's become consistently important and commonly referred to in all the discussions we've had with various stakeholders is this need to focus on learners' increasing effectiveness and securing what we consider lifelong learning to look like. And we think that in that space it's to do with this ability to reflect, to identify one's own strengths and areas for improvement. There's obviously one of the principles of progression looks at increasing learner effectiveness, but what does that look like in the more mature space, I suppose, of 14 to 16, and how does that support learners to be best prepared for life post-education? There are things that happen in the background which obviously influence this, and we're trying to listen to the voice of employers and HEIs who talk a lot about the types of skills, capacities, dispositions that learners need that maybe they don't possess at the moment when they reach them. How effectively can they communicate, can they collaborate, how well can they think critically. So there are things around some of this that we know is important for us as a sector to recognise and try and find a balance as we have a significant number of priorities. How do we prioritise those things that are really important? As far as the guidance and the consultation is concerned, I think its aim, I suppose, is to help schools to understand a few elements. Number one, that we value more than just qualifications, and this is the second presentation. In the first group I said it and I'll say it again, it's easier said than done sometimes in terms of the sector and in how we deal with stakeholders and how parents and learners see this reform and understand their position in that 14 to 16 space. How can we ensure that all stakeholders consistently feel that we do as a system value more than just qualifications and that learners are more than a set of results and set of letters at the end of 16? And all that good work that happens in schools, how can we represent and reflect that at the end of that educational journey at 16? Something then about more practical, logistical, how does this look given the qualification decisions and what the curriculum is asking of schools? How does it all fit together? And then how do we deal with this transitional phase between 2025 and 2027 in the most manageable way possible? And I think the key theme for us to discuss today is how all of this interrelates. Because the Minister mentioned in his presentation looking at the information ecosystem. And I think what's important for us all as a sector is to ensure that things aren't pulling in different directions. How can we support you as school leaders and all our schools to make the right decisions based on the best interests of learners? And how does information, data, and all that sort of stuff that exists in the system as a result of people learning, how does that help schools to self-evaluate and improve what works, what doesn't work, and how can we make it lean and effective for schools moving forward? As far as the 14 to 16 policy is concerned, when looking at the curriculum for Wales, it would be, I suppose, ludicrous to think that the four purposes are not going to play a part in it. But very often, the four purposes can be seen in a very detached, idealistic way. But I suppose one of the challenges is to think about how those four purposes mature into that 14 to 16 space, and what would we expect, what would we want our learners to look like in that sort of at that time, and as they reach the end of compulsory education. So there's something, as an example, if we draw some of the words from the curriculum around the ambitious and capable strand, learners setting themselves high standards, becoming effective communicators and building their understanding across the curriculum. And I think we'd all agree that's a place we're fairly comfortable in, and probably some of the conversations we've had along the years about how we maximise those. But how can we really ensure that that is happening for each learner, and that we do have those high expectations and a system of support to allow all learners to sort of develop that sort of natural capacity, I suppose, to set themselves high standards. But what about being innovative and creative? How do we ensure that our practitioners feel armed and supported to teach in that way, and that our learners are therefore allowed to be innovative and creative even in that 14 to 16 space? And I think we'd all reflect on maybe the experiences of the past. Sometimes those two things didn't necessarily equate in years 10 and 11. And then there are some things around relationships, well-being, independence, which we know in a lot of schools works really well. How can we share that good practice? How can we ensure that all learners are continuing to develop in that way, are continuing to develop as ethical, informed citizens, and are given the opportunity and the time to do so effectively? The principles of progression, again, I think if you conceive these principles in the 14 to 16 space, it's something we haven't had to do because the curriculum for Wales is still on its journey towards 14 to 16. But if we think about these principles in the 14 to 16 space, there's something about the yellow and the orange, certainly, and to an extent the blue, which will form part of their curriculum in the subjects they choose, in the courses for qualifications that they follow. There's an interrelationship, however, between all that learning and all the other learning experiences that learners have in years 10 and 11, which we perhaps haven't focused on, in giving them those opportunities to see that learning in context, to understand how all that learning connects to each other, to understand how their experiences outside of school connect to their learning in school. And most significantly of all, perhaps, how increasing the effectiveness of the learner themselves will support them as lifelong learners and allow a smooth transition for them into the post-16 space. And it's worth spending just a little bit of time on this because we know and have recognised for years that it's supported by evidence. I mean, this is one example of the evidence. So this is from the Sutton Trust toolkit by the EEF. I think over the last 10 years, having dipped in and out to this for various reasons, some academic and some in terms of some research at school, metacognition and self-regulation is consistently up in that top 4. The others have changed a little bit. I think over the last 10 years, I remember seeing feedback there consistently, and that's informed a lot of the ways that we've tackled things at school level, but maybe without fully understanding what progression in metacognition, what progression in self-regulation looks like, and how that might look and feel for a learner as they transition post-16. So I suppose the key question for us now as we move towards discussion is how do we ensure that those important elements of learning and experiences beyond qualifications and opportunities for learners to really reflect on themselves and be ready and well prepared for post-16, how do we facilitate that, and how do we arm you as schools to make those effective decisions around that learner's holistic development, if you like, and progression in that more broad sense, to include, obviously, the qualifications that they study. In that regard, I think, again, conceiving effectiveness of learners in this 14 to 16 space can take a number of forms. Don't expect you to read the whole slide, you can see it later. There's something about obviously being effective and understanding what your post-16 pathways are and being able to make those informed choices. Something about understanding yourself as a holistic person. Always sounds like a funny phrase, but you know what I mean. As a whole person, what are my strengths? Where do I need additional challenge? And where do I need some support? And what does that look like now? And how is that going to look in the future? What does this look as a whole? What represents me as a whole child in terms of my learning, my progression, my achievements in various different things, not necessarily just in qualifications, but much more broadly. What do those achievements look like? Is one example of an achievement the fact that someone has been a home carer over the last number of years and has developed a huge amount as an individual? How do we give that learner an opportunity to demonstrate those skills, that learning, and those capacities at 16 in equal measure maybe to all their learning and experiences in courses that lead to qualifications? So there's something then about how all of that connects together, and recognising that what this requires is time for learners and time for practitioners to spend with learners doing that, and having obviously heard the presentation by the Minister this morning and understanding the tensions that exist in the system around workload and budget and all of that. I suppose that's where the richness of the conversation that we have in a moment hopefully will allow us to sort of work out what is effective and what can support schools in this regard and what might not be so effective. The next, I think, 4 slides, they'll all come up and I'll talk through the bits of them. They've got the discussion questions on them, but they are printed here, so please don't feel you need to make notes because there's a lot of information on these slides, but I'm just going to set the context and show you the questions, and then we'll sort of give you an opportunity. And also, you don't have to answer the questions exactly as they stand. They're thematically linked, and I'm sure your conversations will just happen organically and you won't need necessarily the questions to follow. But just for you to understand the sort of things we're interested in. I think it's fair to say that in our discussions, we've kind of ended up in a position where we think that would be wise to propose that it looks for a 14 to 16 learner like the sum total of 4 sort of parts, if you like. And very pretty diagram which shows one of the parts encompassing the whole. I think that's a significant aspect as well. But just to go through them in turn. In the yellow, we know, as the Minister talked this morning, about certain elements, literacy and numeracy, I think were the examples that he gave. There are certain courses of study where potentially learners do need to demonstrate their attainment for smooth post-16 transition. So we need to acknowledge that, but understand how that looks for different learners of different needs. There's then the menu of other courses and other qualifications that they may choose to follow because they want to start to specialise, and they may be thinking about career pathways, or they may be thinking about ensuring a breadth, and it's our responsibility to provide that advice for them, as it always has been. But how can we ensure that the mix of general and vocational and the choices that we make for our learners are genuinely in their best interests? and what are the tensions that you as school leaders face around those decisions, which at any point take you away from making the decision in the best interest of the learner. So when we come to that discussion later, I suppose that's the tension we're trying to expose. What encourages you, or what would encourage you as school leaders to make the right decisions in the best interest of learners, and what is it that draws your attention away from that, so we can expose it and look to sort of to think about that in a different way. In the purple, we know there are other experiences that are really, really important. And I'm sure we would all say that we would want to maximise that time and those experiences. And I'm sure that you have got, a long track record of things that have really been beneficial for learners in that sort of space, even in years 10 and 11, where we tend to condense that time for wider experiences. Some of those experiences, obviously, and learning, will lead to some accreditation or qualifications, but not all of it, and not all of it should. And how does this purple segment allow us to satisfy our statutory obligations around securing learning in all areas in a way that doesn't mean that everything has to result in a qualification, and we need to conceive option blocks per area. We don't want to force schools to make those sorts of decisions. We're looking at what's best for learners in the sort of package and balance between breadth and that balance with what's right for each individual. And then I suppose this is the sort of the newish bit, if you like, because all that probably feels quite familiar, and what we're talking about is how we can maximise it. How can we ensure that schools have got the opportunity to spend time with learners on that post-16 planning, and more importantly, perhaps, depending on the institution, because they may not be leaving you, how do we provide opportunities for schools to encourage learners to reflect on their own learning and their own progress, so that they become more aware of themselves as learners and become ready to face post-16. So the question, and this is the sort of the side that sets us up, the rest we'll go through quite quickly. Do you agree with the structure in its broadest sense? And again, broadly, what's been included here as being sort of the important aspects of how this looks, where we want to sort of move to a world which isn't all new, but at the same time allows schools to make more flexible, honest decisions around what's in the best interest of learners. This next slide is deliberately provocative, is how I would define it. And as an ex-timetabler, I couldn't resist the temptation to start to provoke ideas around how curriculum time might look. And taking the most traditional of examples, I suppose the question is, would we be content, or are we content, if this is a one-stop shop for all learners? Do there need to be conversations around what's right? And I know it's difficult because it's hard to say without any definite sort of sense of what's in each column. How would you ever equate it? But looking at the qualifications, thinking about what we know is important for most learners, and looking at the guided learning hours, for example, that are provided alongside it, we can start to get a sense of how the new world might look. But how can we safeguard those opportunities for the purple and the green? The last group, as an example, talked about how important that purple and green are, but obviously it's having the opportunity for that to genuinely be reflected in what schools see as important and what everybody else asks at schools. But they're not always mutually exclusive. We know that the learning and experiences are coming from the courses of study, but it's providing opportunities for learners to reflect on that learning and progress in the round, not to see all their learning, and for practitioners as well, perhaps more importantly as they guide learners, not to see these individual things in isolation, but to see how they contribute to that learner's whole or holistic development. So some questions around this, again, they'll be on the sheet for you. I think this is the key question, is how do we enable or empower schools to make decisions in this selection of what goes where and how much time you give it? How could you empower schools to make the right decisions on a learner-to-learner basis, and what prevents you from making those decisions? And I think, as I said earlier, exposing that and having that honest discussion is what we want. So it's empowering the schools as well then to make the most of that purple and green section. How can we bring that to life and give you confidence as school leaders that that time is valued and valuable for all? Natural implications for this: if we think that effective and meaningful learning in these segments is important, then how do our information expectations reinforce this? and this comes to that point of giving you reassurance and comfort around the decisions you make. On a practical level, how can we support you as school leaders to evaluate and to plan for improvement in this space? What works, what doesn't work? Is it a matter of providing information and allowing you to facilitate your own networks, or is it about providing you with data, a family of schools, and presuming that that is helpful from an evaluation and information, evaluation and improvement standpoint? Having those discussions now and thinking about what works and what is less constructive. This slide's available, but I'm just going to fly through it because I'm conscious of time. This was just a matter, I suppose, of provoking the conversation around the types of evaluative questions you might ask yourself. And in this, I suppose, is exactly what we're trying to drive. How can we drive and encourage and support schools to evaluate that holistic 14 to 16 curriculum and the individual progression of each learner ready for post-16 and how they have developed as individuals to that end. So it's how we pull all of this together in a way that recognises it's going to be a lot of work, or that it is a lot of work already. How can we draw on effective practice that exists already? Because ultimately, these proposals are aligned with the Curriculum for Wales and what the curriculum is asking us for. So if we're preparing and we've changed our systems to align with Curriculum for Wales, then the natural extension of this is to ensure that you've got a 14 to 16 landscape that allows that vision to continue. For your practitioners and for your learners to feel that they're on one continuous journey, that there isn't that tension between up to and including year 9 and then some sort of different set of values when it comes to years 10 and 11. How do we balance that in terms of workload? And I think there's something in that about thinking about curriculum time and supporting specialised practitioners to do what they do well, whilst understanding that there is a whole for each learner that we need to understand and view and represent and respect. So I'm going to pause there. That was, as I said, a whistle-stop tour of trying to reduce that by 10 minutes. Sorry to have thrown so much information at you in a very, very warm room. What I suggest now, rather than me sort of try to arrange you into groups, if you just sort of speak to the people closest to you, and then we can maybe have a little bit of time towards the end just to draw out some key themes. If you've got a burning question as a group, you can share it with everyone in about 5 to 10 minutes.